He thought the uniform made him invincible. He thought the gun on his hip gave him permission to intimidate, to harass, and to humiliate. On a sun-drenched stretch of Riverside Highway, Officer Walter Ryan spotted a pristine white sedan. Seeing only an opportunity, a black woman behind the wheel of a car he assumed she'd never earned, he sneered. He lied, and he threatened, and he reached for his handcuffs, certain that accountability was a myth. But he made one catastrophic error. He didn't recognize the man in the passenger seat, because sitting right beside the woman he was terrorizing wasn't just her husband. It was his new superior, the chief of police. And the reckoning had only just begun. The afternoon sun blazed across the asphalt of Riverside Highway, turning the concrete into shimmering waves of heat. It was 2:30 p.m. on a Sunday in mid-September. Inside the cocoon of the white 2023 Audi A6, the atmosphere was serene, cushioned by precision engineering and the gentle whisper of the air conditioning. Rebecca Johnson maintained her grip at 10 and 2, her gaze sweeping the road with the reflexive vigilance of someone who understood that driving an expensive vehicle while black came with invisible regulations. She was 39, a marketing executive whose campaigns had revitalized 3 Fortune 500 brands. But in the side mirror, she knew what certain people saw: an anomaly, a theft. Beside her, David reclined in the passenger seat. He had tilted his sunglasses down over his eyes, pretending to doze, though Rebecca sensed he was fully alert. He had been buried in 16-hour shifts for the past 3 weeks, ever since the city council confirmed his promotion. They were heading home from a stolen afternoon of normalcy, lunch at their favorite bistro before the political maelstrom of his new position consumed every hour. "You good?" David murmured, his voice a low register. "Yeah," Rebecca replied, though her eyes darted to the side mirror. "Except for that cruiser. He's been on us since the Oakmont exit." David didn't shift his posture. He didn't need to. He understood the deployment zones of the Metropolitan Police Department better than its own dispatchers. He knew that Sector 7 West was patrolled by Unit 12 Bravo this shift, and he knew with a cold certainty in his stomach precisely who was behind the wheel. "Keep it steady," David said. "You're not doing anything wrong. Limit's 55. You're at 52.
"I'm aware," Rebecca whispered.
Behind them, the Dodge Charger pursuit vehicle accelerated aggressively. The gap collapsed, and then the inevitable detonation of authority. Red and blue lights erupting, flooding the Audi's interior with a violent staccato of color. "God," Rebecca exhaled, her pulse thundering in her temples. She activated the turn signal, decelerating smoothly, guiding the sedan onto the gravel shoulder near the abandoned grain elevator. David straightened incrementally, adjusting his seatbelt, but maintaining a posture of deliberate calm. "Hands on the wheel, Becca. Windows down. Dome light on." "I know the protocol, David," she snapped, fear sharpening her tone into irritation. She despised knowing the protocol. She despised teaching it to their 13-year-old daughter, Maya. She lowered all 4 windows. The September heat invaded instantly, carrying the scent of scorched pavement and diesel. She illuminated the cabin light, exposing the immaculate tan leather, her own apprehensive expression, and David's obscured features beneath his sunglasses. In the patrol car idling behind them, Officer Walter Ryan sat motionless, fingers dancing across his mobile data terminal. He was 31 years old with 5 years on the force and a track record that oscillated between aggressive policing and outright abuse. To Ryan, the streets were a battlefield and he was the conqueror. "What VE we got, Walt?" His partner, Officer Terrence Blake, asked from the passenger seat. Terrence was fresh from the academy, barely 8 months on patrol. He appeared uneasy. He always appeared uneasy when Walter adopted that expression, the expression of a predator cornering prey. Audi A6, Ryan muttered, working his jaw around a wad of nicotine gum. Registered to a Johnson in Riverside Estates. Riverside Estates? Terrence frowned. That's the executive district. Why the stop? Tail light looked cracked, Ryan fabricated effortlessly. Plus, you see how she was weaving? Probably distracted. Could be stolen. It wasn't weaving, Walt, Terrence ventured cautiously. Ryan pivoted toward him, his gaze flat and glacial. I observed a traffic violation. Rookie. You drafting the incident report, or am I? Terrence studied his boots. You are. Exactly. Ryan unbuckled. He adjusted his utility belt, his palm coming to rest on the grip of his service weapon, a gesture ostensibly tactical but unmistakably menacing. Let's find out whose credit card paid for this ride. Ryan exited the vehicle, deliberately leaving his duty cap on the dashboard. He advanced toward the Audi, his flashlight clutched like a weapon despite the blazing sunlight. He didn't approach with standard officer safety protocols. He approached with arrogance. He aimed the beam directly into the driver's side mirror, blinding Rebecca, then swept it aggressively through the rear compartment before landing it on David's face. David didn't react. He kept his hands visible on his thighs, palms open. He didn't acknowledge Ryan. He stared forward through the windshield. Ryan halted at the driver's window. He didn't offer a greeting. He didn't identify himself. License and registration, Ryan commanded. Rebecca swallowed, squinting against the unnecessary flashlight glare assaulting her vision despite the afternoon sun. Good afternoon, officer. Can you tell me why you— I didn't request a discussion, ma'am, Ryan interjected, his tone saturated with mockery. I requested your documents. You have them? Or do I need to extract you from this vehicle? They're in my bag, Rebecca said, her voice wavering despite her determination to project composure. My bag is on the floor by the passenger seat. I'm reaching for it now. Don't move your hands, Ryan barked, his fingers dropping to his holster, disengaging the safety strap. Hands on the steering wheel. You just told me to get it, Rebecca protested, freezing with her hands suspended in the air. I instructed you to provide identification, Ryan shouted, orchestrating a deliberate game of conflicting commands engineered to create confusion and justification for force. Keep your hands visible. Inside the vehicle, David's expression hardened, a vein pulsing at his temple. He rotated his head deliberately toward the window, looking past Rebecca to the officer. Officer, David stated, his voice controlled but radiating authority without volume escalation. She's complying. You requested ID. She's informing you of its location to maintain transparency and safety. Keep your mouth shut, Ryan snarled, redirecting the flashlight beam into David's face. I didn't address you. You speak when I give you permission, or you'll be wearing steel bracelets in the back of my unit. Understood. David squinted against the light but maintained eye contact. I'm advising you to de-escalate this interaction, officer. You lack probable cause for this level of hostility. Oh, we got a legal scholar? Ryan scoffed. You look like one of those guys who memorized their rights off the internet. That it? Google University. Something along those lines, David replied evenly. Ryan shifted his attention back to Rebecca. He leaned into her space, violating every professional boundary, the odor of energy drinks and aggression permeating the vehicle. Exit the vehicle, Ryan ordered. Why? Rebecca asked, tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. I haven't violated any laws. You haven't even explained the reason for this stop. I detect the odor of cannabis, Ryan declared. The fabrication floated between them, brazen and absolute. "That's false," Rebecca said, her voice cracking with disbelief. "Neither of us uses marijuana. This car is brand new." "I smell what I smell," Ryan grinned, the expression predatory and shark-like, "which provides me with probable cause to conduct a full search of this vehicle and its occupants. Now exit or I'll physically remove you." "Your decision, sweetheart." From the patrol car, Terrence observed, nausea coiling in his stomach. He hadn't detected marijuana. He hadn't witnessed any traffic violation. He recognized this was wrong. But the code of silence, the impenetrable blue wall, loomed thick, and he was merely a probationary officer. He remained seated, hoping the situation wouldn't deteriorate, oblivious to the fact that it already had. David released his seatbelt. "Freeze!" Ryan roared, partially drawing his weapon from its holster. "I'm exiting the vehicle," David said, his voice descending an octave, transforming into the timbre that had commanded crisis negotiations and tactical operations for 2 decades. "Because if you're conducting a search, you require us outside the vehicle. Isn't that correct, Officer Ryan?" Ryan stiffened. He hadn't announced his name. "How do you know my name?" "It's displayed on your nameplate," David lied. The angle and sunlight made the badge illegible. David knew his name because David had personally reviewed Ryan's disciplinary file 4 days earlier, a file documenting excessive force complaints that Ryan's previous commander had attempted to suppress. Ryan hesitated, intuition whispering warnings, but his ego crushed the signals. "Get out, both of you, hands on the hood, feet apart." Rebecca opened her door, her legs trembling as she stepped onto the sun-scorched gravel. David emerged from the passenger side, moving with measured, controlled precision. He walked around the vehicle's rear to stand beside his wife. Ryan holstered his firearm but retrieved his expandable baton, tapping it rhythmically against his palm. He surveyed the expensive vehicle, then the black couple standing in the heat, and experienced a surge of bitter resentment. "Impressive car," Ryan commented, circling them. "What's your hustle? Narcotics distribution? Identity fraud?" "I'm a marketing executive," Rebecca said, her voice fracturing. "My husband works for the city." "The city?" Ryan laughed derisively. "What division? Waste management? Custodial services?" David regarded Ryan. The sunlight reflected off his dark sunglasses, concealing his eyes. "I work in municipal administration." "Administration?" Ryan mocked. "Right. And I'm the governor. Turn around." Ryan positioned himself behind Rebecca. "Spread your stance wider. I need to conduct a weapons check." "She's wearing a summer dress," David said, his voice crystallizing into ice. "She's visibly unarmed. If you touch her, Ryan, you will carry that regret for the remainder of your existence." Ryan stopped. He rotated slowly to confront David. The air between them crackled with electric tension. "Is that a threat?" Ryan whispered, stepping into David's personal space. "Did you just threaten a sworn law enforcement officer?" "It's not a threat," David said. "It's a certainty." The sun beat down mercilessly, creating waves of heat that distorted the horizon, transforming the highway into a shimmering mirage. But in the circle of shadow cast by the 2 vehicles, the universe had contracted to 3 people: a terrified woman, a defiant husband, and a cop who believed he'd just been handed the justification he'd been searching for. Officer Walter Ryan's face twisted into an expression of vindictive satisfaction. He had him, threatening a peace officer. That was a felony charge. That was an arrest. That was a victory. "Turn around," Ryan commanded David, unhooking the handcuffs from his belt. "You're under arrest." Rebecca adjusted the temperature control, letting the cool air wash over her bare shoulders. The black sleeveless dress she'd chosen for lunch clung lightly to her frame, elegant and understated. Through the windshield, the highway stretched ahead like a ribbon of promise, flanked by fields of late summer wildflowers swaying in the breeze. This was the first Sunday in months they'd claimed entirely for themselves. No briefings, no conference calls, no campaign events. Just two people who'd built a life together, stealing a few hours of normalcy. "Remember when we used to do this every weekend?" Rebecca mused, one hand resting on the gear shift between them. David smiled beneath his sunglasses, his fingers interlaced with hers. "Before the promotion, before the politics, before we had to schedule spontaneity. I miss it," she said softly. "Me too." The radio played something jazzy and forgettable. Rebecca hummed along, her shoulders finally releasing tension she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. David's thumb traced lazy circles on the back of her hand. For the first time in weeks, the knot in her chest loosened. She allowed herself to imagine that this was their new normal, that peace wasn't a luxury but a birthright. Then the lights erupted behind them. Rebecca's breath caught. The rearview mirror exploded with red and blue strobes, violent and insistent. Her pulse spiked immediately, that familiar cocktail of adrenaline and dread flooding her system. The peaceful Sunday afternoon evaporated like steam. "No," she whispered. "Not today." David's hand tightened around hers. "It's okay. Just pull over slowly." But they both knew it wasn't okay. It never was. Ryan watched the white Audi slow down, its turn signal blinking obediently. A satisfied smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. He let the vehicle sit there for a moment, let the occupants marinate in their anxiety. Power, he'd learned, was as much about timing as authority. "Why'd we light them up?" Terrence asked, his voice carrying a note of uncertainty. Ryan kept his eyes on the sedan, watching the driver's silhouette through the rear window. Cracked taillight, right side. Terrence leaned forward, squinting. "I don't see." "You need to get your eyes checked, rookie," Ryan interrupted, his fingers already composing the narrative in his mobile data terminal. Plus, she was drifting over the center line back near the overpass. Possible impairment. Walt. She was driving straight as an arrow. Ryan turned slowly, his expression hardening into something dangerous. "You calling me a liar, Blake?" Terrence's jaw worked. He was young, ambitious, still believed in doing things by the book. But he also understood the price of breaking ranks, of questioning a senior officer. The academy had taught him procedure. The precinct had taught him survival. "No," Terrence said finally, looking away. "Good." Ryan unbuckled his seatbelt, the leather of his duty belt creaking. "Here's how this works. I'm the field training officer. I see what I see. You back my play, you learn the job, and you go home safe. You second-guess me, you find yourself working overnight traffic details until you retire. We clear?" Terrence nodded, swallowing his objections. Ryan stepped out into the heat, already anticipating the confrontation ahead. This was going to be entertaining. Ryan leaned against the driver's door, his forearm resting on the roof, positioning himself to loom over Rebecca. "Where are you coming from?" "Lunch," Rebecca said, her voice measured. "At Rosario's on 5th Street. "Rosario's," Ryan repeated, as if tasting the words for lies. "That's a pricey spot. What do you do that you can afford $100 lunches and $60,000 cars?" "I'm a marketing executive." "Marketing," Ryan drawled. "For what company?" "Meridian Group." "Never heard of it." He shifted his weight, deliberately invading more of her space. "You married?" "Yes." "To him?" Ryan gestured dismissively toward David. "Yes," Rebecca said, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. How long? 16 years. 16 years, Ryan mused. And what's he contribute? Or does he just ride around in cars you pay for? David's fingers curled into fists on his thighs, his breathing controlled but shallow. Officer, Rebecca said carefully, I've answered your questions. Can you please tell me why you stopped us? I'll ask the questions, Ryan snapped. You got anything illegal in this vehicle? Weapons? Drugs? Open containers? No, sir. You sure about that? Completely sure. Ryan straightened, his hand dropping to his baton. Then you won't mind if I search it. I do mind, Rebecca said, finding a sliver of courage. You need probable cause. There's that word again, Ryan interrupted, his voice rising. Probable cause. You people love throwing that around like you know what it means. I've got all the probable cause I need. Now step out of the vehicle before I make you step out. David's jaw clenched so tightly Rebecca could hear his teeth grinding. David reached for the door handle. Rebecca's eyes went wide with panic. Don't, she whispered urgently. Please, David. Just let me. It's okay, he said quietly, though his pulse hammered in his ears. He opened the door and stepped onto the gravel, moving slowly, deliberately, keeping his hands visible at chest height. Ryan's head snapped toward him. Get back in the vehicle. Officer Ryan, David said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of command he'd spent 20 years cultivating. This situation is escalating unnecessarily. My wife has been cooperative. She's answered every question. There's no legal basis. Did I tell you to get out? Ryan shouted, his hand flying to his weapon. No, but nothing. Ryan advanced, closing the distance between them in 3 aggressive strides. You just committed obstruction. You just interfered with a lawful traffic stop. I'm not interfering, David said evenly, holding his ground. I'm exercising my constitutional right. Your rights. Ryan's face flushed crimson. You want to talk about rights? Here's a right. I have the right to ensure my safety during a traffic stop. And when someone exits a vehicle without permission, that's a threat. David remained motionless, his hands still raised. I'm not threatening you. Yes, you are. Ryan drew his baton, extending it with a metallic snap that echoed across the empty highway. You're agitated. You're non-compliant. You're exhibiting suspicious behavior. I'm standing here, David said quietly. That's all. Turn around. Hands behind your back. You're under arrest for obstruction and resisting. I haven't resisted anything. Ryan stepped closer, the baton raised. You are now. Ryan grabbed David's wrist, wrenching it behind his back with unnecessary force. The handcuff ratcheted tight, metal biting into skin. David didn't resist. He let his body go slack, compliant, even as his mind calculated every detail for the report he'd be filing. Other hand, Ryan commanded, breathing hard with exertion and adrenaline. David complied. The second cuff clicked into place. Ryan spun him around roughly, his fingers already reaching for David's back pocket. What's in your wallet, tough guy? Let's see some ID. Find out who you really are. David's wallet slipped from Ryan's grip, tumbling through the air in what felt like slow motion. It hit the gravel and burst open, contents scattering. Credit cards, family photos, and something else. A gold shield, gleaming in the afternoon sun. Ryan stared. His hand froze mid-reach. The badge lay there in the dust and pebbles, unmistakable in its authority. Engraved across the top, Chief of Police. Below it, the name, David Castillo. The color drained from Ryan's face. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked from the badge to David's face, then back to the badge, his brain struggling to reconcile what he was seeing. "No," Ryan whispered. "No, that can't be." David met his eyes, his expression unreadable behind the sunglasses. "You were saying Officer Ryan?" Behind them, Terrence had exited the patrol car. He saw the badge. His face went white as chalk. Ryan's hands began to shake. His entire world, his career, his freedom, everything had just collapsed into the dirt at his feet. "Terrence," David said calmly, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. "There's a radio in my inside jacket pocket. Get it." The rookie moved mechanically, his hands trembling as he retrieved the department-issued radio from David's suit jacket. David spoke clearly into the device. "This is Chief Castillo. I need a supervisor to mile marker 47 on Riverside Highway immediately. Officer involved, incident." The response crackled back within seconds. "Copy that, Chief. Sergeant Morales is 3 minutes out." Ryan stumbled backward, his face a mask of horror. "Chief, I didn't know. This was just a routine." "A routine what?" David's voice remained level, but fury simmered beneath the surface. "A routine traffic stop where you fabricated probable cause? Where you threatened my wife? Where you arrested me for exercising my constitutional rights? I made a mistake." "You made several." The wail of approaching sirens grew louder. A patrol SUV appeared over the rise, lights blazing, and skidded to a stop behind Ryan's vehicle. Sergeant Linda Morales emerged, her expression shifting from concern to shock as she assessed the scene. The chief of police in handcuffs, his terrified wife beside their vehicle, and Officer Ryan looking like a man watching his own execution. "Chief," Morales breathed. "What happened here?" "Officer Ryan pulled us over without cause, fabricated violations, threatened my wife with a search based on false claims of smelling marijuana, and arrested me when I objected. Everything's on his body camera." Morales turned to Ryan, her jaw set. "Walter Ryan, you're under arrest. Turn around." Ryan's legs buckled. "Sarge, please." "Now, officer." His career died with the click of handcuffs. David sat in his office at headquarters, the blinds drawn against the setting sun. On the screen before him, Ryan's body camera footage played in damning clarity. Every lie, every fabrication, every moment of intimidation captured in high definition. He watched himself get handcuffed, watched Rebecca's hands shake, watched Ryan's predatory smile. Deputy Chief Maria Santos stood behind him, arms crossed. "There's more." David paused the video. "Show me." She placed a thick file on his desk. Ryan's personnel record. David opened it, and the pattern emerged like a cancer metastasizing through pages of complaints. 12 excessive force allegations in 5 years. 23 complaints of racial profiling. 47 traffic stops of minority drivers in white neighborhoods, each one justified with phantom violations. Broken taillights that weren't broken. Swerving that never happened. The perpetual smell of marijuana that materialized only when the driver was black or brown. His previous commander buried most of these, Santos said quietly. Marked them unfounded or training opportunity. David's hands trembled as he turned the pages. Names leaped out at him. Marcus Williams, arrested for resisting. Charges dropped. Keisha Thomas, cited for expired registration. Her registration was valid. Roberto Fernandez, searched for weapons. None found. Victims who'd filed complaints, then withdrawn them. Victims who'd been too terrified to speak. Victims who'd been told no one would believe them over a cop. "How many?" David asked. "We've identified 37 potential victims over the past 3 years. That's just from preliminary review. David closed the file, his jaw tight. Get internal affairs working overtime. I want every case reviewed, every victim contacted, and I want the DA's office looped in tonight. This wasn't just about one bad stop. This was about justice delayed for far too long. The courtroom fell silent as Marcus Williams approached the witness stand. He was 23 now, a college senior studying engineering, but his hands still shook as he placed them on the Bible. 2 years had passed since his encounter with Officer Ryan, but the trauma lived fresh in his eyes. Mr. Williams, the prosecutor began, please tell the court about November 12, 2023. Marcus took a breath. I was driving home from my campus job at the library. Around 10 p.m. Officer Ryan pulled me over on Hamilton Street. Did he give you a reason? He said my license plate light was out. But it wasn't. I just had the car inspected the week before. Marcus's voice strengthened. Then he said he smelled marijuana. I've never touched drugs in my life. I had a 3.8 GPA. I had scholarships. But he searched my car anyway, tore through everything. When he didn't find anything, he arrested me for resisting. Were you resisting? I was asking questions. I was scared. Marcus looked directly at Ryan, who sat rigid at the defense table. He slammed me against my car, put his knee in my back, called me boy, told me people like me needed to learn respect. The prosecutor approached with a document. Is this the arrest report Officer Ryan filed? Marcus scanned it, his jaw tightening. Yes, and it's full of lies. Says I was belligerent. Says I tried to flee. Says he found drug paraphernalia. All fabricated. Why didn't you pursue charges against him? Marcus's voice cracked. Because I was terrified. Because everyone told me no one would believe a black college kid over a white cop. Across the room, Ryan's attorney dropped his pen. The courtroom was packed the day the judge delivered the sentence. 7 years in state prison for civil rights violations, falsifying official documents, and assault under color of authority. Ryan stood motionless as the bailiff led him away in handcuffs. His uniform replaced by orange scrubs, his badge a memory. Rebecca sat in the gallery beside David, her hand clasped in his. For the first time since that September afternoon, she felt like she could breathe fully. 3 months later, David stood at a podium in City Hall, flanked by Marcus Williams and 32 other victims of Ryan's corruption. Behind them, a banner read, Accountability First. Today marks the implementation of our mandatory body camera review program, David announced. Every traffic stop, every use of force, every citizen complaint will be independently investigated. The days of officers policing themselves are over. The crowd erupted in applause. Marcus stepped to the microphone, his voice steady now. 2 years ago, I thought my voice didn't matter. I thought the system was too broken to fix. But Chief Castillo proved that one person standing up can change everything. Rebecca watched from the front row, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of trauma, but of vindication, of hope. That evening, she and David drove home together on Riverside Highway, the same route where it all began. The sun set behind them, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Think it'll stick? Rebecca asked. The reforms. David squeezed her hand. It has to, because too many people are watching now. Too many people know what's possible. She smiled. For the first time in years, the highway felt like freedom instead of fear. And have you ever been in a situation where you had to stand up to someone abusing their authority? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If the story kept you on the edge of your seat, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets us bring you more powerful stories like this one. And if you haven't already, Hit subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss a upload. Until next time, stay safe, know your rights, and never back down. Thanks for watching.